Hi guys, this video is brought to you by AcetheCLAT. So in this video we'll be looking at an important aspect of or important part of critical reasoning, which is strengthening or weakening the arguments. So what I mean by strengthening or weakening the arguments is that when we try to strengthen the argument, we try to make the conclusion or claim of the author more likely. Okay? As we all know, there are two parts of an argument. One is evidence and the second one is claim, right? When we try to strengthen the argument, we try to uphold the claim, right? And when we try to weaken the argument, obviously we try to weaken the claim, है ना? We try to make the claim less likely to be true, and while strengthening we try to make the claim more likely to be true. ठीक है? In this video we'll be talking about how to identify a strengthening or weakening type question, how to approach I will talk about a strategy to approach such questions, and we will also be looking at 3 worked out examples to give you a better understanding. Alright, so let us get started with how to identify a strengthening or weakening question. So why is it necessary, guys? Because especially in CLAT, when there are different types of questions, है ना, कोई strengthen पे होता है, कोई weaken पे होता है, कोई inference पे होता है, कोई conclusion पे होता है, assumptions. There are a lot of types of questions. So the first step is to identify whether it is a strengthen or weakening type of question. Okay, and indicator words, हर क्वेश्चन तरह टाइप के इंडिकेटर वर्ड्स होते हैं. सिमिलरली स्ट्रेंथन या वीकन टाइप के क्वेश्चंस के इंडिकेटर वर्ड्स आर, और basically questions are framed in these ways. All right, which of the following if to most weaken the author's argument, है ना? Which of the following offers the strongest criticism? Which of the following if to strengthens or weakens the arguments made by the author, है ना? And another way is कि which of the following if true undermines the argument above. Undermines मतलब basically weaken होता है, whereas underpin होता, अगर underpin होता, that is strengthen. Okay. A very important point over here is, guys, the difference between most weaken and similar and just weaken. Okay. So when a question setter tries to create a trap, guys, he or she tries to get you in the question stem only. Okay. ये इस तरह की बात करके most weaken या फिर weaken, least weaken, है ना? There is a lot of difference between most weaken and least weaken, and if the candidate is not vigilant enough, he is going to make some silly mistakes. And most weaken and simply weaken. Talking about most weaken and simply weaken, most weaken मतलब question setter expects you to do two things, ठीक है? और expects you to know two things. Alright, first is कि there are more than one option that can weaken the claim of the author. ठीक है? More than one option that can weaken the claim of the author. And the second thing is that the correct answer choice is the one that weakens or strengthens the claim most comprehensively. ठीक है? It is then your job to identify the option that strengthens or weakens the claim most comprehensively. Alright, so let us talk about a strategy to approach these questions. Alright, the first and foremost thing is that you should read the question stem first. Okay, reading the question stem in terms of paragraph based. Passage based में मैं आऊँगा, ठीक है? I am talking about paragraph based right now. Reading the question stem is important, guys, because as I told you, the question setter may create a trap over there, right? Most weaken बोल सकता है या फिर least weaken बोल सकता है. Least weaken would in fact mean strengthen, right? So इसलिए reading the question stem carefully is the first thing you should do. Second thing is identifying the claims or evidences presented in the paragraph. Claims and evidences. And you need to first thing for doing this you need to be able to distinguish between claims and evidences. All right. So that's the thing you need to work upon. So the third and final thing to do is, guys, is to evaluating the answer choice one at a time. Okay. Evaluate the answer choice. One thing you need to keep in mind is that any answer choice given in a question of strengthen or weaken type will do three of the following things. Sorry, will do any one of three of the following things. Okay? There are three types of answer choices. The first one is that the outside piece of evidence that is given in the answer choice has absolutely no effect on the argument. Okay, and when it does have effect, there are further two kinds of effects, right? Uh, Strengthening the argument or making the claim more likely to be true, and the second one obviously is to weaken the argument or making the claim less likely to be true. Okay, so these three things you need to keep in mind. Passage based. In passage based questions, the problem that we face, guys, is that there are multiple paragraphs, right? And at least two or three paragraphs are there, and on the basis of the entire passage there are at least four questions, and generally there are five questions, and sometimes there are four questions. Okay, and a bigger problem is that all the questions are of different types. So for example, the first question may be of an inference type question, the second may be of strengthen type question, third may be of weaken type question, fourth may be of assumption type question, and fifth may be of let's say paradox type question. Yeah. So so this is the problem, right? But one thing that works in our favor is that once you get to identify which type of question is this, okay, once you identify which type of question I am solving, then you are pretty much sorted, because you will apply the same set of skills that you apply for paragraph based questions. Okay, यानी कि strengthen or weaken type question in a passage is very similar to solving such question in a paragraph, है ना? ठीक है? So obviously you need to read the entire passage first. Reading the question stem and evaluating the answer choice one at a time. Okay. So let us now look at some worked out examples. The first one is this. This was by the way taken from an LSAT India wala question. Okay. LSAT India ka paper. So to identify which type of question is this, let us go to the question stem. Here is the question stem. Here, which one of the following, if true, would most strengthen the therapist's argument? So one thing is clear, as I've already said, कि when the question setter says most strengthen वाला पकड़ो, then it is very much possible that any more than one of the options strengthen the argument, strengthen the author's argument. But that the one that does it more comprehensively, that would be our choice, our answer choice. That would be the correct answer choice. So the therapist says that cognitive psychotherapy focuses on changing a patient's conscious beliefs. Okay, so there is something known as cognitive psychotherapy, which the author says or the therapist says that it alters or changes a patient's conscious beliefs. Okay, fair enough. Then the author says, thus, which is a good indication that what follows in this part of sentence is that is the conclusion or the claim, right? thus के बाद है ना common indicator word से common indicator word है. Thus, cognitive psychotherapy is likely to be more effective. Okay, cognitive psychotherapy is likely to be more effective at helping patients overcome psychological problems than all forms of psychotherapy that focus on changing unconscious beliefs and desires, since only conscious beliefs are under the patient's direct conscious control. Okay, so he gives us two pieces of evidence, right? The first one is over here. The second is after this sentence, after this word. I am sorry. He since, as I've told you, he जब भी author reason दे रहा होता है ना, he or she is actually presenting the evidence कि हाँ भाई इस कारण से मैं ये बोल रहा हूँ. Since only conscious beliefs are under the patient's direct conscious control. Okay, second piece of evidence is कि only conscious beliefs are under patient's control. And conclusion क्या है इसका या फिर claim क्या है? That cognitive psychotherapy is likely to be a more effective. That CP is likely to be more effective than other forms of psychotherapy. So let us evaluate the answer choices one at a time. Let's look at option A. It says that psychological problems are frequently caused by unconscious beliefs that could be changed with the aid of psychotherapy. Okay, unconscious beliefs it is talking about the problems that are caused by unconscious beliefs could be changed with the aid of psychotherapy. This in fact is trying to support this the other forms of psychotherapy, right? Which focus on unconscious beliefs, है ना? While our claim is that cognitive psychotherapy, which does not focus on such things or such unconscious beliefs, is better than other forms of psychotherapy, which does in fact which does support unconscious beliefs. So it is pretty obvious, right? Ki any evidence which tries to strengthen the claim of the contemporary of the or the opposition of the cognitive psychotherapy is not going to strengthen the entire argument, right? So that is why A cannot be the correct answer. Let us look at option B. It says that it is difficult for any form of psychotherapy to be effective without focusing on mental states that are under the patient's direct conscious control. This in fact does support the argument because when this evidence talks about any form of psychotherapy, it is talking about any, right? Literally any form of psychotherapy, like cognitive की भी बात कर रहा है, other forms of psychotherapy की भी बात कर रहा है, and it says that it is difficult for such forms of psychotherapy which do not focus on things that are under patient's direct conscious control, which means that it is difficult for other forms of psychotherapy which do not focus on conscious beliefs or does focus on unconscious beliefs, है ना? And we know that our CP यानी cognitive psychotherapy does focus on things that are under patient's direct conscious control, है ना? So that is why option B is definitely the correct answer, because it definitely does strengthen our argument. So although we have our clear winner over here, but let us try to understand why option C and D are wrong. Option C says cognitive psychotherapy is the only form of psychotherapy that focuses primarily on changing the patient's conscious beliefs. Well, that is true, but does it, think about it, does it strengthen the argument? है ना? Does this strengthen it does not definitely weaken the argument, but does it strengthen the argument? In fact, guys, this is one of those types of answer choices which has no effect on the argument, because our claim is a relative one, right? His CP is better than other forms of unconscious beliefs. But this says कि cognitive psychotherapy का इसने advantage बता दिया. It is the only form of psychotherapy that focuses primarily on changing the patient's conscious beliefs. But that is not the only reason that cognitive psychotherapy is better than other forms of psychotherapy, right? Right? Or that cannot be the only reason that, है ना? So that is why it says nothing about why CP is better than other forms of psychotherapy. And I understand that this may sound appealing, but this is definitely not the correct answer. Okay. Option D says no form of psychotherapy that focuses on changing the patient's unconscious beliefs and desires can be effective unless it also helps change beliefs that are under the patient's direct conscious control. So ये क्या बोल रहा है कि for a psychotherapy to be effective, it should focus on both unconscious control पे भी focus करना चाहिए and conscious पे भी focus करना चाहिए. Well, this is okay when this choice says कि conscious पे focus करना चाहिए, but when it says कि unconscious पे भी focus करना चाहिए, it is indirectly supporting this thing, right? Other forms of psychotherapy which does focus on unconscious beliefs, and we know that anything that supports the opposition or the contemporary of cognitive psychotherapy would not be strengthening the argument, and hence would not be our correct answer, right? So we clearly have our winner here, and that option is option B. So now we move to our example or passage 2. Passage is a CLAT based passage. Okay. We have the passage over here with 2 paragraphs and questions on the next slide. There are 2 questions only. I just made questions based on strengthening or weakening the claim. Alright. This one is the most weakened claim question, and this question you have to identify कि what role is this statement playing. ठीक है? If the Western Ghats are the crown jewels of India's natural heritage, the Eastern Ghats, spread across some 75,000 square kilometers, longer than the Western Ghats, and from Odisha to southern Tamil Nadu, and play an important dual role, that is fostering biodiversity and storing energy in trees. So, author says कि Eastern Ghats are have their own importance, right? They are spread across some 75,000 square kilometers and play an important role in two areas, that is fostering biodiversity and storing energy in trees. In these mountains matlab in Eastern Ghats, exists a reservoir of about 3,000 flowering plant species occurring in the dry deciduous and moist deciduous forests. Crucially, and importantly, many parts, primarily in Odisha, provide forest produce and ecosystem services to millions. Given the key functions that the lands perform in modulating climate and fostering biodiversity, new research findings arguing that the Ghats face a threat from climate change is a cause of concern. Okay, so author is saying that here is a problem, right? What is the problem? That Ghats facing threat from climate change. Alright. Existing data point to the impoverishment of areas experiencing rainfall reduction in the driest quarter of the year and a rise in seasonal temperature through reduced plant species diversity and a dominant role of for herbs over trees. Okay. So in the first paragraph, author is mainly stating the importance of Eastern Ghats, the characteristics of Eastern Ghats, है ना? He also mentions that Ghats are facing a threat from climate change. The second paragraph says that protecting the Eastern Ghats, which are separated by powerful rivers, the Godavari and Krishna, is an ecological imperative. The forest protection policies have often failed dismally. By some estimates, just one region, Papikonda National Park, lost about 650 square kilometers in 2 decades from 1991. Relieving the pressure on forests can be done through policies that reduce extraction of scarce resources and incentivize settled agriculture. So, the author in the second paragraph is saying uh, that forest protection policies in India have failed dismally, and by some estimates that there is a huge problem in one region, right? In this Papikonda National Park. So, okay, so here is the problem. One national park has lost so much of its park in the last 2 decades, and author presents a solution that uh, relieving the pressure on forests can be done through policies that that reduce extraction of scarce resources, that reduce which means we need to reduce extraction of resources and primarily scarce resources that are or already scarce, and we need to promote settled agriculture. Okay. Improving tree cover nationally is certain to confer multiple benefits, including modulation of the monsoon, improved air quality, and wider spaces for biodiversity to persist. So, in the last line, the author gives us a suggestion, right? We need to improve the tree cover of the nation, and by doing so, we will have multiple benefits, including modulation of the monsoon, improved air quality, and wider spaces for biodiversity to persist. So the overall tone of the passage, I would say, is suggestive, right? First, he's talking about Eastern Ghats. He says some characteristics of Eastern Ghats. Then he presents some benefits of the Eastern Ghats. Further, he talks about threats that the Eastern Ghats or the Ghats in general face from the climate change. Then he gives some suggestion. Then Then he specifically points out a particular national park, है ना, which has lost a lot of area in the last 2 decades. Then he gives 2 or 3 suggestions, right, that we need to relieve the pressure from the forest. How that can be done by lowering or reducing the extraction of scarce resources, and by promoting settled agriculture. The second thing is to we need to improve tree cover. Right. What role does the statement, a disruption of the annual average temperature and diminished rainfall would drop the productivity of the forests, play towards the author's claim in para 1? So I think it is pretty obvious that it's trying to strengthen the author's claim, right? So let us move to the first paragraph. In the first paragraph, some important claims that the author makes are that the Eastern Ghats play an important dual role, right, in fostering biodiversity and storing energy in trees. He says he also claims that the fact that these ghats are facing threats from climate change is a cause of concern, and also that existing data point to the impoverishment of areas experiencing rainfall reduction in the driest quarter of the year and the rise in temperature and the rise in seasonal temperature. So it is pretty obvious, right, that this statement is probably going to strengthen the author's claim in the first paragraph, right? Because if you see that author has presented an evidence that existing data point to the impoverishment of areas experiencing rainfall reduction in the driest quarter of the area, driest quarter of the year, and the rise in seasonal temperature, which means, and what is the cause of that rise in seasonal temperature? It says that it is through reduced plant species diversity and a dominant role for herbs over trees. Means that if the annual average temperature rises, the cause of that would be the reduction of plant species, right? And obviously, guys, when the species of plant, when the diversity of the species of plant reduce, the productivity of the forest is bound to go down, right? And diminishing of or reduction in rainfall is also pretty obvious a sign of robbing the productivity of the forest, right? So this was a pretty simple question that it strengthens the author's claim. Okay, so let us look at question number 2. Which among the following will most weaken the claim made by the author? Again, most weaken बोला है कि तो more than one options may weaken the claim made by the author, but we need to look at that option which weakens the claim most comprehensively, right? So option A says only a few species thrive in the ghats, but the trees store enormous amounts of energy. Okay, this the first part of this evidence does in fact contradict what the author's claims, right? Author says that there is fostering biodiversity, right? Which means there is a huge diversity of biodiversity in the region. But if you look at the second part, it starts with a but and says that the trees store enormous amounts of energy. That is clearly on the lines of the arguments of the passage, because here look at this part. Uh, the author says that the Eastern Ghats does play an important role in storing the energy in trees, and our option choice also says that the trees store large amounts of energy, which means that it does weaken the argument partly but not comprehensively, right? So A is not the correct option. Let us look at option number B. Research indicates that the Ghats have expanded by a whopping 16% in the last 50 years. Do you remember, guys, कि ऑथर ने यहाँ पे बात की थी एक नेशनल पार्क के बारे में, which had lost about 650 square kilometers in 2 decades from 1991. But option says that in fact the area in the Ghats have expanded by a whopping 16% in the last 50 years. So that attacks the author's evidence, right? Author says कि in one part of the Eastern Ghats, so let us say this part is Eastern Ghats, and in one national park of the Eastern Ghats there is a loss of biodiversity, there is a loss of forest area in the last 20 years, but in the whole of the Eastern Ghats there is in fact a whopping 16% increase. समझ रहे हो? Which means this option clearly attacks the premise of the author, right? Right. So this option clearly is the winner again. Option number B is the correct option. Okay. Let us look at option C. The Ghats face an existential threat from change in climate and temperature in the region. If you see, the most important claim of the first paragraph was that it is a cause of concern that the Ghats face a threat from climate change. So this option is clearly in line with the passage, right? Author also says that, the option also says that. So this cannot weaken the argument. The government has formulated a policy which will not promote deforestation of Ghats. Okay, the question setter over here has played with the words, right? Do you know the meaning of? Look at these two words carefully. not promote, and even this word deforestation. Not, which is a negative word, promote, which is a positive word, and de, which is again a negative word. And if you take the product of all these three words, you will get a positive one. This is how words also work, guys. And the option says that the government has formulated a policy which will not promote deforestation of the ghats. It means that it will it will promote afforestation of the ghats, which is also in line with the passage, because in the last paragraph the author has given suggestions, right? So this is in fact strengthening the argument, which means that it is not the correct option, right? So thank you, guys. I hope your weakening and strengthening type of questions are sorted by now. If not sorted, at least you have your basics in place, right? So thank you, guys. And if you did found this information useful, please consider subscribing to our channel AcetheCLAT and liking this video. Thank you.